Hello YouTubes, we have another DCC install on an Athearn Blue Box. However, this is not for me. This was actually won by Christian in Sweden. So I asked if he wanted me to convert this to DCC, which he did, so that's what we're going to do. I better be careful. Let's get into this. Athearn Blue Box, F45, Burlington Northern, new old stock. Picked this up at a train show. Not because I wanted it, just because I couldn't resist a bargain, and it was a bargain. Now, I will be installing the lenses in there. I don't really want to do too much of the work because, you know, that's part of the fun of these kits. I'll let Christian take care of that. So I need to install the lenses there before I can install the LEDs. So lens in there, lens in the back. I'm not going to install these. He can do that himself. However, just to make life easier, when I do wire up these lights, I will be attaching a couple of plugs so that they can be easily unplugged, shell removed, and he can work in that without having to have lots of wires in the way. Now I just noticed at the front there, there's a couple of big holes there. I wonder if it's got a plough in this bag, which we'll find out because I'm going to have to crack into this bag to get the light lenses. So I've done quite a few Athearn Blue Box upgrades in the past, so this shouldn't be too much of a problem. Let's begin. The body is held on with these two pins at this side, same on the other side, so we should be able to stretch the shell out, give it a wibble. Shell should drop down. Of course it's not. It's always harder with the bigger locos. The smaller GP units, the 4-axle jobs, have just got a clip in the middle, so that's not working. Let's persuade it with a little screwdriver then. Gently. Okay, that's those two sides out. Other side, and it's off. Okay. Let's see what lies beneath. Oh, very clean. Look at that. Sometimes on these older units, this bar here is completely rusty, and these are rusty, so that's good. Throw that away. I'm not using that again. I know it's a shame, but hey. Also, we'll not be using this pickup here. This is purely the negative for the headlight, which we're also not using, so let's remove that clip. Remove that bulb. And sometimes we can just lever this bar out with a pair of pliers. Just kind of wiggle it a little bit. I don't care if I break this. I'm not going to be using this as an electrical pickup anyway, but it is just getting in the way. There we go. Okay. Might even break that off completely, but not at the moment. I need to make sure I'm going to have an area for the left rail pickup, front and back. I can see straight away that it's not going to be a problem, which is usually the case with the bigger locos. Now, I'm going to put this to the side for now because I actually want to get the lights all sorted out. So let's open up our little bag. Make sure we've got our lenses first, okay? Hopefully our little light lenses are in here. Stanchions and all sorts of stuff, brake cylinders, little coupler box clips, no lenses yet. I didn't want to put them, stuff it, right, they're all there now. Okay, we've got windows, I believe that's a window lens. Where's the, oh, there's the horn. But again, I'll put all this back in the bag. I'll let Christian take care of it. There we go, there we go. Okay, we are looking for that one there, and that one there, and hopefully they are the same size. I have experienced a problem in the past where one of these has got slightly longer or different thickness lenses front and back, and I can never tell which is which because the diagram is not exactly clear. I can't even tell. Those ones look like they might be a wee bit smaller, but it might be an optical illusion. No, I think they are the same. We will find out when we try and get them in. Right, let me put all that back in the bag, because I don't think I'm going to be using any of this. As I say, I'll let Christian take care of that. Okay. Okay, they are all rebagged. Now, getting these in can be a bit of a pain, although not in this, however. Some of them you have bracing there that stops access to those little holes, because they go in from the inside out, which is why I'm doing them first, obviously. Oh goodness. There we go, way down there, plenty of access, so I should be able to pop these in. If it's a tight fit, I won't use glue. However, if they're a bit loose, I will need to add just a little bit of glue. Okay. Of course, this one goes in sideways and the other one goes in up and down the way, so hopefully we can get these in with a pair of tweezers. Oh, that's awkward. Let's try it this way. That way as opposed to straight up and down. It seems to be nice and tight. Give it a squish down and they should just poke out just a tiny wee bit. Yeah, I think that's pushed all the way home. I'm not coming out any further. Just give it a wee prod with the tweezers, make sure it's not going to fall out. Yep, that seems fine. Do the same with the front. Oh, it's even awkwarder because these are up and down and I don't have access to go sideways, so I'm going to have to go this way. Nope, fail. There's a wee rough bit at the end of the light lens there. Maybe able to just slot this in with my finger. Ugh. I know, I'm going to wet my finger. Don't worry, I don't have any bugs. Well, not that I'm aware of. And we're in. Nice. As before, I'm just going to give it a wee prod. Looks good. Nothing falling out. Now we can decide on bulbage. I have a good idea of what I'm going to be using. I am going to use a couple of these 3mm re-resisted warm white LEDs. As always, make sure you test them first. I'm not going to be using this wire, it is very chunky. But for now, we can test them. As you can see, nice and warm and white, almost yellowy, but that's okay because this particular loco came out in 1969, I believe. And I think to add a bright white LED would just look a bit crass. I don't mind the bright white, they're almost bluey white LEDs. I don't mind them in the newer locomotives, but this one, let's go with the warm white. So, tested that one, test this one. Make sure they're working just fine. Now, I mentioned I wasn't going to be using this wire. Obviously, I need to use most of it because we do have the, you see the little bulges? That's your little resistors on each. So I'm going to snip these wires back about there. And then I'm going to attach a couple of plugs with wires. I found these little guys from AliExpress, smallest ones I could find. So I'm going to require Two sets of these, male and female. Okay, they only plug in one way. They only plug in one way. That's okay, nice tight fit. And the wires are just a little bit smaller than the ones in the LEDs. Actually, they're a fair bit smaller. You can see that there. Okay, so I need two sets of them because obviously one side is going to be attached to the bulb. The other side is going to be attached to the decoder. So let me dig out two sets of them. That's one set. That's another set. Okay, right, that's me get my wiring. Next up then, there's one more thing I want to do with these LEDs, and that would be to put a little bit of heat shrink tubing over the bulb itself. Obviously I can cut this down to size, and what this is going to do is it's going to prevent light bleeding at the sides of the LED, so it's only going to shoot out forwards. So slide that over there, snip the end off, like so, and the light's just going to shoot out the end. So I'll do that for both of them. Move this out the way, heat up my glue gun. My lovely cordless glue gun. These are great, but you do have to recharge them all the time. And I'm using the little refills so I don't poke my eye out. Switch that on, wait for the magic to happen. Meanwhile, there is a few other things we can take care of while that's heating up. Let's get these LED wires cut off and we will attach our little plug wires. Okay. Don't want to go mega short, I need room to actually strip them back a bit. That should be plenty. Put these in a safe place for future use. That's a lie, I never use them again, I should put them straight in the garbage. But you never know. Right, strip that back. That one. These two. Good to go. Let's find our little wires. Now, I'm going to have to put heat shrink over these, so probably best to... I've just got these plugged in just so that I had them all nice and safe, but we do have to put the heat shrink over first, obviously, because once we solder these together, we can't get the heat shrink on, obviously. But not only that, and especially for the first one, or the front one, sorry, I'm going to be using a large piece of heat shrink to cover everything. So that needs to go on first. And then an individual piece of heat shrink tubing on each of these. So we can, let's say we connect the red one, put the heat shrink tubing over it. Connect the black one, put the heat shrink tubing over it. So they'll be close together. And then I'm going to slide this over the whole lot. And the reason for that is I want to basically cover the red and black wires. I should have just done it to show you. But anyway, that's going to go over like that, like that roughly. Because when we put this in the front, down there, you would see the wires through the windows. Because that's going to go from there down to there. And I would rather just have a black tube visible than red and black wires through the windows. Okay, see where I'm coming from? So that's the plan. Let me get all those wires soldered together. The rear wire doesn't matter if I don't need to use the big bit of tubing on the rear because you're not going to see it through a window. Actually, you might see it through that one. No, you won't because it's going to be way up there. So just the big fat tubing for the front. Right, let me take care of that. Well, that's my LEDs ready for mounting. Almost. There's one more thing that I have to do in this particular shell to make the bulbs line up properly. The light lenses in the nose are actually sitting fairly low down compared to the top. So if we were to install the bulb, you know, stick it to the underside of the hood, as you can see, hopefully, it's not going to line up with the light lens. So we need to put a little spacer in there. Anything will do. I happen to have some of these old phone SIM cards. And you can just build these up until you get the right height. I think I got these from John BFGR in a box of stuff. So I think for that one, you know what, I'll just keep sticking them in, test fit this until we get the right height, and then glue it all in a oneer. Now the nose is a little bit pointy, so I'm going to cut these to shape just with a pair of scissors. There's also, you see those sort of round sections there? These little cards aren't quite narrow enough to fit in there, so I do need to trim them down a little bit. So let me take care of all of these and then we'll start gluing everything in place finally. So I have established that I need 3 layers of this particular thickness of plastic to bring my lenses to the right height. Let me just throw them in there with a drip of super glue. I don't want to use hot glue in this section because it's going to raise the height more than I want. So get that in there. Get the one in the back done. Drip, 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 drip. That looks fine there. Well, when I say it looks fine, it looks horrible. So how about we just get our black acrylic marker pen and just hide that. Okay, just, we were never here. As much as it's a semi-bodge job, I don't want it to look like a semi-bodge job. Much better. Do the same with the back. Cool. Much better. Now, let's get our LEDs glued in. This time I will be using the hot glue. Is this warm yet? Yes, it is. So, one generous blob in the front. Get our light lens or our LED right in the middle. And hold that. And I will be putting more over the top once this initial layer is set. Looks good there. Just hold it till it's set. Looks about right. Before the glue is completely set on the underside, just a little bit over the top. If you go too far, then you risk heating up the glue on the underside and losing your alignment. So a little bit over the top, let that set. I'll do the same with the back. Front and rear LEDs are now in position, but obviously we've got some wires dangling. So for the front one, that's going to get sloped down there and glued to the underside of the roof. So I need a little blob glue there. Hold that till it sets. In fact, while I'm holding it, I'm going to put a little blob over the top as well, because I can get both sides of the wire and hold it in place. So I'll wait for that to set. That should be enough for that one. Let's do the back one. And this is really just to make sure the wires don't get in the way of the mechanism. Blob there. Push the wires into the glue. A little bit on the top. Hold that till it sets. And what I'll probably do is put another little blob down where my pinky is on the left for this wire, and then we'll be done with that. And that's our lights installed. I've left enough wire that we've got access for the plugs to go onto the decoder. Now, I know this doesn't look as neat as you might like, but it's solid, it's not going to get in the way. You can barely see, well, you can obviously see that black tube, but without doing some fancy rerouting, bearing in mind if you slide this section down over the body, it's going to hit, so you can't even run the wires down the side. Trust me, when it's trundling along, you're not going to see the black tube through the window. You could even put drivers in there, well, engineer and the other guy. You could even paint these, or you could even add micro LEDs to make it even better. But as I say, all you're going to see is a bit of black pipe work, right? I'm happy with that, and it's served me fine, you know. Anyway, let's do one final check before we move on to the next stage of this install. Okay, let's plug them in. Battery, see how they look. So front headlight. Now you notice it's really just shining through the top lens. It's just the shape of that lens. It's difficult to spread the light on both, so I preferred it on the top rather than the bottom. And if you were to use micro LEDs, you could put one on each lens, but I don't think you need that. I think that's going to look just fine. It's very bright under the desk, so it's going to be much brighter on the track. Plus, this is just a 9-volt battery. That's going to be getting like 12 volts. So it'll be fairly bright, but quite a nice colour. Let's check the rear. And the rear looks like that. So it's slightly biased towards the right-hand side. Still pretty good though, pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, we have lights installed with our little plugs. Let's move on to the decoder install, shall we? As with all Athearn Blue Boxes, we need to isolate the motor from the chassis. If you are new to DCC conversions, especially in an Athearn Blue Box, I will quickly go through how this works in DC format first of all. This is the front of the loco, so this will be the left-hand side. So all these wheels need to pick up power from the left rail. They do that by, obviously, the power goes into each wheel. You see this metal plate here, the same in that one. So that metal plate goes up this way and is attached to that platform there. Now, don't be mistaken for thinking that that is connected to that. They are separated. You can see a little gap through there, okay? So that's not connected to that. We'll talk about that one in a wee sec. Now, so we've got the power coming up through the wheels, through that plate there goes up to that platform there, and if you look down there, in that little gap, you might see a shiny pin, okay? That shiny pin in up there goes into a little receptacle on this bar here. This is all metal, okay? So you've got the power coming up to that platform, it then goes up to there, and then that's attached to the chassis, and all that black section there, this is all metal. That is all connected to the left wheel pickup. Exactly the same at the front, okay? Little platform, pivot point in there. So the way that the power gets to the negative side of the motor down here is there's a similar little copper strip on the bottom, but it's got little prongs that reach down and touch the chassis. The top section, right rail pickup, would normally get its power from these little bars here, which is exactly the same. Right rail pickup connects to that bar goes up to this 90-degree, actually it's a U-shaped bar, okay? And remember that section that I threw away earlier? That one there. So that would normally pick up the power from there, take it along. Positive side of the motor, same the front. Positive side, right rail pickup goes in there, but as I say, we're not using that. So that's how that gets the power to the motor, but we want to intercept that power coming from the rails into a decoder and then send the power from the decoder to the motor, which is why we have to isolate it. First thing I need to do then is strip the trucks down. And thankfully, it's super easy to do in an Athearn Blue Box. You got these little clips here. Get a screwdriver under here. Remove that clip there. Remove the worm gear. There's also a little drive shaft extension there. So we'll just put that all to the side and it drops down. And there's our little platform I was talking about. With I thought the pin was on that, but the pin is obviously on the underside. Okay, you can see the pin there. So that little hole locates in there to transfer the power from the left rails. Right, exactly the same in the front. Little clip. Remove that. Worm gear. Drive shaft extension. That drops down. Easy peasy. Move them out of the way for now. I do have some work to do in these, but let's take care of isolating this, shall we? This is held in place by a couple of, well, they used to be kind of rubbery plastic pads. They can become brittle over time, so if you want to reuse them, you need to be careful. You need to kind of push them out from there. Sometimes, if they're soft, you can wiggle this and it'll come out, but you do risk cracking the top section of these pads. You can get replacements, but that's a pain, you know. If you've got everything ready and you don't have to go out to the shops, then, you know, take your time. Right, I like to use a Robertson screwdriver for this, or a Robbie, as we call it in Canada, as opposed to a Phillips to push these down. So let me go and grab one of them. This is what a Robbie looks like. So instead of having a nasty pointy bit at the end that's going to stab your mounts, it's got a nice square end. So hopefully we can get this out without damaging the motor mounts. That one and that one are connected, and that one and that one are connected, in case you're wondering. So I would do those two first, then those two. Unfortunately, these ones are quite stiff. Oh, it is coming. It is coming. Oh, got that side out. Okay, you know what we can do? We can take it out that way just now. And then we don't have to pull on those little sections there. They're the bits that like to break off. So you can just persevere and get this out. Kind of want to take your time if you want to reuse these things, you know. So that's what we'll do. Oh, no, we're out. Oh, almost. There we go. So a wee bit frayed, but not the end of the world. They're still perfectly usable. It just slides out like that. Okay, so I might cut away the wee frayed bits, but they're perfectly fine. We can move on. So you see that little shiny bit there? It's just where the paint has been scraped away. It's not an add-on, that is still part of the chassis. And these are the little prongs I was talking about for the negative side of the motor. You can see that. So they would normally reach down there and touch that metal strip. Power coming up from the left rails, goes onto that little bar there, and that little bar feeds into the negative side of the commutator. Okay, so we don't want that to happen anymore. So the first thing I like to do, get a little bit of tape and just cover that up, just in case. Okay. Oh, too much tape. Let's trim that down just a wee shade with my invisible scissors. Oh, there we go. So that over there, that bit's done. Next, want to take care of these prongs. Now, people sometimes take this thing off and bend them flat, or they try to bend them flat. I have tried, but this stuff is really strong. And because it's been pressed out, it's almost impossible to bend them flat. So I just like to take that off, cut them off. You could just put it back on like that, or swap it with that one, which is perfectly fine and smooth and flat. They are interchangeable. And while those little bars are off, we are going to attach some wires to the ends. Now that is so that the wires coming from the decoder can feed the motor with power. I recently had to repair a locomotive, and whoever did the DCC install had wired the negative wire straight onto the end of this. Not at the end, but right there, and it was actually reaching down and shorting out on that. It was just such a bodge job. I do not know who it was, but if you're watching, shame on you. So I'm going to remove them, and I will explain why I'm going to be attaching wires and where they're going to go eventually. So we can remove these by unclipping it there. Not that side, but that side. See how there's a difference? Get a wee screwdriver in there. Rotate that round. Make sure your finger's on the top, because we do have a spring and a brush inside there. Take that out. Brush doesn't always come out. Oh, it did come out on this occasion. Put that somewhere safe. Do the same with the other side. In there. Finger over the top. Remove that. Remove the spring. Remove the brush. Lovely. Now, if you get confused, the bottom side is the ones with these holes, which is where your little motor mounts go in, okay? Just in case you get mixed up. While it's like this, I'm going to give it a clean. I think I did already clean this, but I'm going to give this a wee clean. You see a lot of people cleaning this commutator while the springs and brushes are still in, but all you're doing is putting the dirt into the little brush end. So might as well take advantage of this, clean it up while we're at this stage. It's not had a lot of use, like this one shouldn't have. The only reason it's dirty is, I think, because I was testing it to make sure it was working before I did this conversion. But you can use like a fiberglass pencil if it's really nasty. You might also want to get maybe a very fine toothpick and clean in those little grooves. But as I say, this one, it's not really seen any action, so we're good there. And the final thing I want to do with this is I'm going to get some oil, just a drip. You see down there in that little bearing down there, you want a wee drip of oil in there. Ideally we want one in there as well, but it's kind of hard to get to. Sometimes this moves back and forward a wee shade. Oh, this one moves quite a lot. So we can get a wee drip of oil down there. Obviously you don't want oil on your commutator. I'm using a very fine syringe for this. Non-medical. Little drip in there. Ooh, that was quite a big drip still. And we'll get one down there, hopefully. This does make a huge difference, by the way. Oh, that's way too much. Right, I need to get in there and try and clean that out. Okay, that should do it. And that is good. That is all good. Right, next up, I'm going to take care of these little metal bars. These little copper strips. So I've decided that this one is going to go on the top, this one's going to go on the bottom. Let's prep this one first. I'm going to get rid of these little tangs. Sometimes I call them tangs, sometimes I call them prongs. Today I'm calling them both. Right, eye protection, because this does like to ping towards your eyes. But again, if you want to try and bend them down, go at it. Have at it, whatever the phrase is. Personally, I just find it easier to cut them off. So that one's going on the top. Let's take care of the bottom one. I want to solder on a little piece of grey wire to this, right at the end. And let me show you why. This is the decoder I will be using, Lays DCC. I will link them in the description where I get them. They are pretty cheap for us in Canada because we don't pay the crazy import tax that you Americans do. If you're watching in Canada, yay! However, the other reason I get these is they are very small. If you imagine the TCS or your Digitrax decoders are about that size, probably the same sort of length, but they are much wider, and this fits in everywhere, and so far it works great. Right, enough of that. Power coming from this decoder to power the motor is the orange wire, which goes to the top of the motor, and the grey wire, which goes to the bottom of the motor, which is this one, which I want to attach to this, because as we have established, that is going to attach to the underside of the motor and connect to that brush there into the commutator, right? Now, I don't like to install it straight onto the decoder because I'll be installing this and the motor and everything. I don't want to damage the decoder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a bit of this wire off. Let's go with enough to get up the side of the motor. So I would say probably that much. Okay. I'm going to install it or solder it onto the very end. Again, not the top, the end. So we need a little bit of flux paste, a little bit of solder, a little bit of focus would be nice. And a little bit of my solder fan that's not switched on. If it hums, that's what the noise is. Okay, now we can get our little grey wire soldered on. Let's tin it up first. And we'll get that on place there. Like so. So that's ready to get reinstalled. Turn my fan off for now. We can start rebuilding this motor and get it back in place. So we will get our brush back in. There is a sort of curve to it, as you can see. That's why I'm taking my time here. I'm sure they start off flat, but once you run them in, they get a wee bit curvy, so you might as well try and put it back in curvy. We'll get a little spring in. Don't drop these. They're really hard to find because they spring very far away. And we'll get our little connector bar over. They only go on one way. Remember, you've got a small hook that side and the levering hook, we'll call it, on that side. So the small hook goes the opposite side of the spring, over there. Make sure you don't drop the spring out the side. Make sure you push these two sides together when you try and clip this on. They do like to separate the motor a little bit. You see what I mean? See how that's moving? Make sure it's all the way in. Make sure your spring's all the way in. Like that. And I have seen these springs try to bend over a little bit. And then you get into running issues. So make sure everything's nice and straight. And then clip that down. Like so. The other side, I will be soldering something onto this at some point, and also I will be removing this again, but for now I want to keep the motor together while we reassemble. So I'll get this back in, brush in, spring in, because if I leave it on the desk I will lose it. And I'm putting this back on temporarily. As before, little hook at the back. Make sure you squeeze your motor together. Why did these springs keep doing that? Get back in there. Camera shy. Hook in the back. Make sure your spring's straight. Clip it down. Let's reinstall this back in there. Let's get our motor mounts in. Slide that on there. You can put these on either way around. Doesn't matter which way around you put these. They are exactly the same. And hopefully this will now slide back into its little home. Only goes one way, by the way. You notice the shape of this indent here. in the shape of the underside there. It's longer there, so it's longer there. Only goes in one way. Wiggle it. Massage it. And it should just pop in. Ooh, that felt nice. Spinning nicely. All good. This is my grey wire for the left rail pickup. Not the left rail pickup. The negative of the motor. That's going to come up here. Okay, it is time to have a look at our trucks. Or bogies, if you prefer. These have to go around the right way, okay? Right rail pickup, it hooks over from that side. It's fairly self-explanatory. So instead of making contact for the left rail pickup through this pivot point here, we are actually going to solder on a wire to there and to there. To there, okay? For the right rail pickup, we don't need this whole thing hooking away over, so I'm going to snip that, because it's just going to get in the way. I'm going to snip it down to about there. Again, eye protection, this will ping. Or not. And I just like to trim the corners so I don't stab myself when I'm installing things. Right, just make a nice little shape. Same for this one. Obviously, there is no going back to DC by doing this. Or at least, not back to original by doing this. So if you're horrified watching this, I do apologise. Kind of. So I am going to, let's see, I don't need to put the wires on yet, but it's much easier to get the solder on at this point. The solder will need to be a wee bit hotter than normal, because it's a much bigger chunk of metal, right? So a little bit of paste, let our soldering iron get nice and hot. I'm at 360, 360 should be okay. So I just want a blob round about there. Now you can't do this with the smaller Athearn Blue Boxes because that pivot point is usually round about there, so you just don't have the space. But in the bigger locos like this, no problem at all. So heat that up, not too much because it is in plastic after all. Okay, little blob there. That should be plenty. Same in this one. There we go. And I forgot to put my fan on yet again. So bad at that. Quite important at this point to give this a bit of a clean. With some alcohol. And a Q-tip. Oh, there they are. Because this will rust. Because we've kind of taken off any protection from that metal surface. And also the flux is not exactly friendly. So we've got our little solder blobs ready. We can reinstall these now. Now actually, hold on a second. We might as well get our solder blobs on there as well while we've got this out. We will have plenty of access for this once we've reinstalled, but hey, strike while the soldering iron's hot and all that. Putting my fan on this time. One blob. Two blob. Right, fan off. Let's reinstall, shall we? Right, easy peasy. Get that in there. We still have to locate that on its little pivot point, even though it's not taking power from the chassis. Get our little drive shaft in, or our drive shaft extender. Get our worm gear in. Also, it's so much easier without that hanging over and getting in the way. And we'll get our worm gear in place. And our clip on the top. One down. Drive shaft extender. Worm gear. Get you in place. Clip on the top. Lovely. So as you can see, we still have access for our little solder blobs to wire to the decoder from the, let's see, that's the left rail pickup. Okay, so left rail pickup points there, right rail pickups there. So we don't actually need this anymore. I'm just going to take it out of the way. It might interfere with our bulb at the front of the loco because it sticks away up. And as I say, the purpose of that was only ever to feed the negative for the incandescent bulb. So a bit of jiggery pokery, and that'll just come off. It's kind of riveted on or stamped on place, so you're never going to get this back on if you rip it off, by the way, so be warned. There we go. See what I mean? It's got a sort of rivet pressed thing. Excellent. Okay, suppose we might as well install a decoder. Yes, we've still not started with the decoder. So the question is, where do we install this little decoder? Because there's no platform. Back in the bad old days, I would just get some hot glue and stick it on there. But we have evolved since then. With the magic of 3D printing, I've made some of these. These came from thingiverse.com. Free download. Print it yourself. And the way this works is, this will actually go around about there, underneath that. And this is why I did say that this was a temporary putting it back on, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that clip. Again, don't lose your spring and brush. Put the spring somewhere safe for now. So this is going to sit here. And then this goes over the top and holds it in place. It's a great design, it really is. I'm not making them, before you ask. I'm not posting these out because you're not allowed to do that. It's a free download. If you start making money from a free download, you get lawyers' letters. Now, I do have to make couple of modifications to this, possibly. Let's see. No, just one. As you can see, there's some little recesses there. I think they're designed for like sugar cube speakers, but this is not a sound decoder install. So I'm going to install my decoder there. Okay, but as you can see, if I install it like that, it's going to slope up, which kind of sucks. So I'm just going to snip the end of them. There. And there. Let's break that end off. That makes it nice and flat for my decoder to sit on top, like so. Because space is everything. Now you could do it that way, have the wires folding back that way, or you could put it in this way. Which, yeah, I think I might do it that way today. So what we'll do, now that that's prepped, we can get our little connector bar back on. Put our spring back in first, obviously. Now, I am thinking that I might have to modify the front of this clip. Sometimes you have to do it because that edge there might hit against that wall there when we try and get this in, but let's find out. That goes over there. Make sure your spring's straight. Try and clip it down. Oh, it's perfect. No problem at all. So that is doing two things now. It's going to provide the power to the positive of the motor, but it's also keeping our decoder platform in place. Fantastic design, really is. And if you do download this, make sure you leave a tip to the guy who designed this. So next up then, we're going to place our decoder there with a bit of hot glue. Oh, I better go and heat up the gun. Okay, I changed my mind about where I'm going to put this. I don't think I want it there because I don't really want the wires bending up that little wall. So we will just put it backwards and then they can all double back on themselves like that, okay? So a splodge of hot glue, please. Squidge that. Squish you down there. Very nice. So far, the hot glue has been really great for attaching that surface to that surface. No problem at all. Right, the fun part. First of all, switch this off, recharge it, because it's, you know, probably dead already. And then we'll get on with the wiring. Let's start with the wires going to the motor. So the grey wire is the negative of the motor. I'm just going to shove it up this little gap here. Make sure it's not going to foul any moving parts down there. That should be fine. And we're going to reattach that to the grey wire where we snipped it in the first place. We're going to keep it nice and short. So let's go. Oh, I used the wrong pliers, snips. Cut that, strip that, reattach these two. Get my solder fan on, extractor. Okay, get a bit of heat shrink at the ready. I don't know why I cut all these little bits so long. I had a bit of a procession line and I just made them all the same size and they're all a wee bit on the long side, so I've wasted many inches of heat shrink doing that. Okay, let's get these connected. So that is the negative for the motor coming out of the decoder into the negative of the motor. Oh wait, I was going to tin these first. Okay, now we can join them. Like so. Heat shrink over the top. Use my mini blowtorch. I had been using the soldering iron to heat the heat shrink tubing, but I decided that was a silly idea, so I got myself one of these. You don't have to go mega close, but it's very directional. Like so. Let's go for the positive side of the motor then. That's going to go on top of this, and that is the orange wire. Seems to be a universal color coding thing. Let's put it right in the middle there so we're not next to the spring in the brush. So let's cut it back to about there. Give yourself a wee bit of wiggle room. Tin that up. Let's get a little bit of solder on that connector bar. Now we can connect our orange positive for the motor to there. I think I'll use tweezers for that. I'm getting a wee bit close to my fingertips with that very hot iron. Fail. Let's try that again. Lovely. That's us got our positive to the motor, our negative to the motor. Right, let's get some power into the decoder from the left rail and the right rail. So left rail is black, red rail, red wire is positive, right hand side. So this one black wire has to get connected to that blob and that blob. So what we'll do is, I'm going to cut this back. It's a bit there. And then we'll use this bit of wire. We'll attach that to that little solder blob down there, okay? That one down there, okay? tin. I'm just going to trim this wire back just a wee shade. Okay, and let's attach it to down there. So that's one of our left rail pickup wires. Now we're going to join these two together. I'm going to twist them first and then solder them. Okay, you get the idea. So they're going to come up there and they're going to make their way to the front. So they need to get connected to that little blob down there. So need to get another bit of wire just for that job. I found some very nice fine and flexible wire on AliExpress. I think it's maybe silicone coated. I will provide links for anyone who wants to purchase some. So that has to go from there all the way up to there. As we'll start with it longer than we require. So about that much. And we're going to have to do the same with the red wire, okay? As always, tin it up first. Dirty tip. Let me clean that. And we can join them together now. Oh, messed that up. Okay, so obviously I didn't twist them together properly. No biggie. That's why you always start with a wee bit more wire than you require. And how about we use the claw that came with this kit? That would make sense, right? That will keep them together. So now we've got 3 wires all joined together. Obviously, before we connect this one, we need to get the heat shrink tubing over the top. Slide him all the way down. Down to there. Get a little blowtorch. If you go too close, too fast with this, it will just burn the heat shrink. So don't be tempted to rush it. And then finally, we need to run this all the way down to the front blob. So I reckon you need to allow room for movement, obviously. I reckon that'll be fine there. Snip that. Get a bit of solder on the end. And we can get that soldered into position down there. That took a bit of persuasion. Remember, that is going to require more heat down there to heat up that whole tab. So that is the left rail done. Just got the red one to do. Right rail pickup. Exactly the same process. So I'll bring you back when we've got the red looking exactly the same as the black, okay? That's both sets of pickup wires sorted. So black, black joins together, goes into the black of the decoder. Red, red joins together, goes into the red of the decoder. Orange goes to the positive of the motor. Grey goes to the negative of the motor. So technically this is now DCC. Just got the lights to take care of. I did put a blob of hot glue down there just to stop those wires flopping about. Now, we still have quite a few wires here, but we're not using many of them. We're only going to use 3 to be precise. So let's cut away the ones we don't need. I'm not going to cut them too short because Christian might want to add a beacon or something further down the line, so I'll leave enough room that he can do whatever he wants. So we don't need the green at the moment, and we don't need the purple. So that leaves us with these 3 wires. Blue, common positive. That will feed the positive of any light that you've got in your local. So they need to get spliced into that. White is the front headlight negative, and yellow is the rear headlight negative. So you're probably thinking, wait a minute, I've got 3 wires, but I've got 4 wires in my LEDs. Well, as I mentioned, the blue, common positive, has to go to both of those wires there. Both of the red positives for the LEDs, right? Now, they're way too long. We don't need them that long. So let's cut them down a little bit. Let's go with that much. Okay, that should be enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to join both of these red ones together from the plugs, and they will get connected to the blue. This wire's a wee bit thicker. I'm not sure if I can do it with my fingernail. Oh, yes I can. Lovely. So we'll join them together. They're going to get connected to the blue. Now, because the blue is already attached to the decoder, we do need to remember to get a bit of heat shrink tubing on first. And because those wires are a bit thicker, we need to make sure we've got the right diameter of heat shrink tubing so that it gets over both of those red wires, right? So do a wee test fit first. Let's try this one. This is the one I use for pretty much everything for these wires, but I've got a feeling it might not be wide enough to go over these 2. Oh, yep, no problem. Well, there's a bit of resistance, but that's okay. And here's a bit of a tip. When you solder this to the blue, don't have the heat shrink too close, because it'll start shrinking and then you won't be able to move it. So slide that all the way up there before you connect this to the blue. Yes, I'm adding a little bit of flux just to make sure, because I want this to be an instant join. Like that. So that's both the positives of the LEDs connected to the blue. Just wait for that to cool down a wee bit, just to make sure the heat shrink doesn't prematurely shrink. I'm sure you're all very familiar with that problem. Right, let's slide this down. A wee bit bumpy solder there. Lovely. And we will now shrink it. Now there's a lot going on here, so you do need to be careful at this point. Do not melt all your lovely wiring. Okay, that's enough. 2 wires to go. Now the good thing is, right, I know these are going to be confusing because you're like, well, what's the front, what's the back? It doesn't matter. Both are the same plugs. So if we get the lights round the wrong way, we can just swap the plugs over. So no biggie. So at this stage, let's just go with this one to the yellow. I'm going to cut this down a bit actually because that is way longer than we require. I'm going to cut that one down to there and cut this down to there. Now we can get them joined together. Oh, things are falling off my desk. I hope that wasn't important. Try not to burn your fingers. We're getting a wee bit tight here for space. Look at that. One wire to go. So it's going to be the white. Front headlight, negative. Again, we're just going to trim the wires down a little bit. Less wires we've got floating about inside the shell, the better. And I think, other than the heat shrink, yep, the heat shrink that I forgot to put on. Oh, I thought I was going to get away with it this time, but no. I wonder if anyone spotted that. Hopefully not. I'll just edit it and pretend I got it perfect. Running out of space on my desk, in case you're wondering. Oh, tight. Tweezers. Okay. And now we can get the heat shrink over. Very careful now. Zero space. No margin for error. Shrink that down, I mean. Awesome. Turn my fan off. Move everything out of the way because all the wiring is done. These will now get plugged into those little receptacles and we will be finished. So one last thing then, just to try and tidy this up marginally. A little bit of tape over there. Just make sure we have got rotation on both the trucks. All good. Tape that wiring down. Lovely. Now just pop the shell back on. So let's see if we can figure this out. Okay, so this is the rear. The yellow one's the rear. So if we trace that back, that's this one here. So we can plug that in there. And obviously the other one is the front. Plug that in there. And hopefully we have enough room left in the top for the shell to go on without any wires interfering. I'm a wee bit concerned that all these wires at the back are a bit close to this moving area. But we'll see. I think we'll be okay. Let's find out. So we get that back on. And just squish it down. Might need to pull this out just a wee bit on one side. Other side. The other side popped out. Oh no, the other side's in. So plenty of room. Although that is no longer rotating. So I've caught something. Let's take it off, find out what's going on in there. There's nothing to catch. What did I do? Clips down properly. Oh, it was probably just caught on the truck on the ladder at the other side. I hope. Nope, there's definitely something amiss. Oh, I tell you exactly what it is. Believe it or not, it's that black insulated, not insulated, the heat shrink tubing pipe is actually hitting off of this. So let's see what we can do about that. It just needs to get bent down that way a bit, and it should be fine. I was not expecting that. So I need to squish that wire way down that way and get some more glue in there, because it is just hitting the top of that. So I'll bring you back when that's done. I like to show you all my mistakes so that you don't make them. Right, back in a wee bit. I removed the glue from there, and I have added some glue down there and squished it down at a wee angle. Hopefully that's all it needed. You wouldn't have that problem if you used micro LEDs. So, swings and roundabouts. Right, where were we? Yellow. Rear headlight. That's this one. White. Front headlight. That's this one. Wow, these are tiny little plugs. And we'll try that again, shall we? Tuck those wires way up the back. Slide our shell over. Fingers crossed everything goes to plan. There we go, much better. Yeah, so it's moving back and forward that way, turning that way. I can see in the window it's not hitting off anything in there now. This one's fine. I think we're done. Let's get to the track and see if we are indeed done. Okay, let's put this on the inside track, because I've got something on the outside track further round. Don't want to crash Christian's new loco before he even gets it. Looks good so far. Right, let's apply some power. Normally the headlight comes on when you apply power, but not on this occasion. So, loco address number 3. It's moving, but where's the light? Okay, we don't have a light on at the back. Oh, we've got a head. Oh, how did that happen? How did that happen? I've got them wired the wrong way around. I did say all I had to do was, you know, swap out the plugs. I could have sworn I got those plugs the right way around. How did I do that? Maybe I had the loco back to front or something. No, because it's coloured. Yellow is the rear. Oh, yes, I got them wrong. You see that little loop back there? I thought the yellow was looping round, but the... What? I'm still confused. Anyway, I'll swap them round. How? That should be the front. Oh, whatever. swap them round and hopefully everything will be resolved, but that doesn't make sense. It will probably come to me in the middle of the night. Oh, what am I talking about? It is the middle of the night. It'll probably come to me when I'm sleeping. Let's see, that's the white, should be when it's going forward. And that is attached to this one, which is now suddenly going to the front. Oh yeah, I was just being blind and stupid. Right, okay. I did have them in the wrong way around. Imbecile. Right, back together. Still turning, back to the track. Numpty. Okay, let's try that again. Oh, headlights immediately on, and we are in the forward position. Forward. Tell you what I'll do quickly. I'm going to change the address to 6642 and just make some changes to the CV so that it performs a bit nicer. Okay, we can finally go for a proper test run. 6642 is the number. Gradual acceleration and go. Now remember, this is technically new, so it will need run-in, Christian. But straight out the box, it's pretty good. Let's take it around to the far side of the track and we'll do a wee crawl by the camera over there. But it's pretty quiet for an Athearn Blue Box, and the more we play with it, the quieter it'll get. I mean, the more we operate it. We don't play with trains, do we? Okay, let's see if we can get up to the camera for the money shot. Once it's got its handrails and horn and brake cylinders, etc. fitted, it will look so much nicer. But it actually looks pretty nice, I have to be fair. It's growing on me, which is a shame because, you know, it's leaving me soon. So speed step 1. Not a bad crawl for an Athearn Blue Box, which is probably about 40 years old, let's face it. Mightily impressive. Right, we'll go for a wee blast. Looking good. I only have a couple of cameras set up on this particular setup, so we do have to wait for it. Oh, I see a fallen tree over there. Ooh, must have been high winds at the weekend. And yes, I've got a construction crew in the future town area. I'm just talking to make up time till this gets back. And one final change of direction when it passes us. Excellent. Very happy with that. Slowing down, and he will come back, and his wee light should come on. Oh, by the way, I didn't find any ploughs in that little bag, but there's definitely space to add snow ploughs front and rear. So there we go. We're done. Extremely long video, but I like to make these as detailed as possible in case anyone wants to do the same to theirs. I do love the crawl in these things. I think the 6 axles crawl better than the 4 axles for some bizarre reason. Okay, I need to stop playing with this. Done. Right, I suppose I better get that packaged up and sent off to Sweden. Thank you for watching. Any questions? Ask someone else. I will try and include a link to everything I used in the description below. And I don't have any affiliate links for anything, so just it's not my fault if you buy it and it's rubbish. It works for me. Anyway, see you soon. You might have noticed a wee motel over there. I need to work in that next. Bye for now.